So today we're going to do my mid-season power rankings. We've already done a preseason prediction and an early power rankings, and now we come to the mid-season power rankings and see what's changed. And we are going to start off here with the Pacific League. And for those of you who don't know what the Pacific League table looks like, it looks like this. There's two teams 4-0, DRX Gen G. There's two teams that are 0-4, Talon and Detonation. And then there's kind of this big mid-table is what I would say, between Zeta, who are 3-1, Global, who are 1-3, and then four teams who are 2-2. This is really, I think, where, you know, the crux of this power rankings is going to come in. And so, some of you suggested last time that I kind of show the change that has happened, you know, from my preseason predictions to then, you know, the early and to the mid. So we will be doing that at the end once I've done the most recent rankings for each one. And we're just going to start off by not even mentioning some of these teams, right? Because DRX are 1, Gen G are 2, Talon 9th, Detonation 10th. I really don't think there's much debate to be had there. That's kind of, I think, just going to be the case for most people. We don't really need to talk about those teams because I think everyone would probably be in agreement. But then let's talk about this middle 6 teams, because this middle 6, I think, is where the disagreement is going to come in, and a lot of people will have different rankings based on, you know, whatever you feel about these teams. So let's start off at the top, shall we, of this middle 6, 3rd and 4th place. To me, 3rd and 4th probably comes down to two teams, and that is Paper Rex and Zeta Division. Now, between these two teams, I think, you know, it's probably maybe pretty close, given how they've played recently, but I am going to go for Paper Rex over Zeta Division. The reason I'm going to go for Paper Rex really isn't too much with the way that they've played. Obviously, they've added something, and, you know, something has added something. Get it? And, you know, they have that bit extra firepower maybe in some of these maps and whatnot, and maybe it helps the rolls out on certain maps a bit more and whatnot. But you can still see, as their game against DRX, there was still a big divide between Paper Rex and DRX. You know, DRX kind of stomped them, and I think Gen G would beat Paper Rex as well. But I do think if Paper Rex and Zeta played against each other like 10 times, I do think that Paper Rex would still probably win the majority of those games, just based on their kind of, you know, firepower alone, and their kind of, you know, they're just Paper Rex, so I just kind of have a bit more faith that they would be able to beat Zeta enough. But for Zeta, you know, I think that they've shown in these recent weeks, their only losses come against DRX, and they've shown kind of, you know, that, yeah, they are maybe just a tiny bit above, you know, some of these other teams, and, you know, that they probably will make playoffs, and then, you know, they potentially could even go to Master Tokyo, which of course is what we're all hoping for. And then you've got kind of this rest of the pack, let's say these four here. And in 5th place, I might surprise some of you, I'm actually going to put RRQ. If you watched RRQ play against Team Secret, you would have seen RRQ looking like the better team from pretty much start to finish. And yeah, just that, basically. Like, it didn't look like a fluke win or anything like that. It looked like they were just the better team. And in their last 2 games, they stomped Detonation, and they pretty much stomped Team Secret as well. And so I'm a bit surprised myself to be putting them up here. But yeah, I think that they just played a really good game, and I think that they've clearly improved. And people who had them as, you know, one of the worst teams or whatever that whole time were kind of trolling, because RRQ, if you actually ever watched them play outside of maybe the first game of Lotus against Foot at Lock-In, other than that map, they haven't actually looked that bad. And so, yeah, I think RRQ just look like a decent team that continue to improve, and yeah, I'm gonna put them in 5th place. In 6th place, this is where I really had to start to debate where I was gonna put people, but I am gonna put Team Secret still in 6th place. I did think about putting Global there, but I'm gonna stick with Team Secret for now. It feels like maybe, I don't know, they just kind of got ran over by RRQ, which is a bit worrying, and I do think that there are maybe some issues that they can have where, you know, maybe they aren't the most firepower heavy team, and that they need good game plans to be able to win some of these games, which sometimes they do have, but maybe they've just, you know, not quite been there, or they need to adapt a bit more recently. Maybe teams with the extra VODs and whatever have started to figure Team Secret out a bit, so we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, I'm still going to stick with a bit of faith in Team Secret, but in 7th, I will be putting Global and T1 in 8th. For Global, you know, they obviously added in the Indian players more recently, got their first win, although it was against Talon, so I'm not going to give you, you know, too many gold medals for that one, Global, but, you know, we'll see how they go. If they beat one of the teams who, you know, I potentially put above them or whatnot, then I'll start to, you know, feel like they could do it, and they very easily could be, you know, fifth 5th or 6th, I think you could argue for them being, and that's fair enough. But I just maybe need to see a bit more. And T1, they got rolled by Paper X, they got rolled by Gen G, and I know that Paper X and Gen G are up there, but, you know, they barely even put up a fight, right? And I remember when T1 beat Talon, everyone was like, oh, wow, you know, T1 beat Talon. Oh, you know, things are coming together for T1. They started off 2-0, here we go, but then, yeah, that win over Talon doesn't look so good anymore, does it? And you know, I don't know. It just feels like this team still has big problems when they come up against anyone who has, you know, a decent idea of what they're doing. And so here is how things have changed in the Pacific. The first column is my preseason predictions. My second one is the early season. And then this one is obviously the one we've just done. My Gen G prediction looking pretty good, not gonna lie. You know, I'm not sure how many people would have had Gen G second early on, but that's looking pretty good. Obviously, most teams are kind of sticking around kind of where they, you know, normally were. You know, I initially had T1 at 9th. They moved up to 5th when they were 2-0, and now they're back down to 8th, so no big surprise there. My Talon prediction not looking too hot, but RRQ have kind of been the big riser recently, you know, from going to 8th to 9th, but now all the way up to 5th. They seem like a team that, you know, is on the rise. Okay, moving on to EMEA. This is currently what the EMEA looks like, obviously with Fnatic up there at the top. Actually, 3 teams are 3-1, 3 teams are 1-3, and only BBL are winless so far. And so again, if we just remove kind of the easy ones, Fnatic are obviously number 1, Navi are obviously number 2, and Karmine Corp, unfortunately, will be number 10, despite the fact that there is a winless team. So, let's talk about the rest of these teams then, shall we, and where we should put them. And so, let's start off with what I'm going to call the battle for 9th place, which to me is very much between Team Heretics and BBL. You could really go either way on this one. Both teams have just been stomped on some of their maps by some of the better teams in the league. And yeah, I wouldn't blame you for putting either team down here in 9th. I guess Team Heretics won a map off Navi, so I'm gonna give them 8th, based off literally the fact that they won one map off Navi. Now, to me here, there's a clear 7th place as well, and that is Koi, who look a bit lost, to be honest, at times here. Koi are very clearly, I think, the 7th best team here. And then you've got this 4, which you could put in quite a few different orders. In 3rd place, though, of these 4, I'm going to put Giants. Which might surprise some, but I do think that Giants, and particularly Cloud, is just playing out of his mind right now, and they seem to be coming into maps with good plans, and I mean, they lost their first 2 games to Fnatic and Navi, which is maybe fair enough, right? And then, you know, since then, they've looked good. And so I feel like, yeah, it makes sense to put Giants here. Okay, they lost to the 2 teams above them, but I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if they literally won every other game from this point, because they look like a very solid team who could potentially do that. In 4th place, we are going to put everyone's kind of favorite underdog team right now, which is Foot, who kind of, you know, came out of the woodwork, and, you know, I thought, hey, look, they've got a decent Lotus, and, you know, that's good, and maybe they even have the best Lotus in the world. I mean, they've played it like 5 times or won all 5 times, so maybe they genuinely do have the best Lotus in the world, but they still are managing to, you know, get results on other maps as well. I still have some concerns about some of their map pool, but, you know, it looks like they are making improvements as they go along as well, and, you know, maybe as that map pool gets a bit deeper, they look like a pretty solid team. And then the battle for 5th here, I'm gonna give the slight edge to Vitality. This almost feels a bit unfair on Team Liquid, because to me there is a massive gap between 6 and 7 here, but the gap to 3 is quite small. Like, I think that these 4 teams, the gap is quite small, and based off what we've seen so far, I think that, you know, these 2 are probably going to go to Tokyo, and 2 of these 4 are probably going to go to Tokyo, and it's probably going to come down to, you know, one-off games between them to see who goes. So, you know, there's a lot riding essentially on these playoffs, but yeah, I think the gap from 6 to 7 right now looks pretty big, but the gap from 6 to 3 is really quite small. And so here's how things are looking then in the overall tables. Fnatic and Navi obviously still the top 2. My early season Koi prediction not looking too hot, it must be said. And remember, in the first week they actually beat Navi, so, you know, I had them 4th here because, hey, they beat Navi, they must be good. But since it has looked worse and worse, to be honest. And Foot, I was perhaps late to the Foot train, because, yeah, they've clearly been a big riser. The bottom three still looks like the bottom three, and then you've still got Giants rising as well, pretty high here, all the way up to third. And then finally, let's come to the Americas League, and this is what it currently looks like. Loud, the only flawless team thus far. Crew, the only team without a win thus far. And then a whole bunch of 2-1 or 1-2 teams. And so, let's get the easy ones out of the way again. Loud are obviously top. Crew are obviously 10th. And EG beat Crew, but are still EG, so they're 9th as well. And then we've got this middle of the pack where this is where the rankings are going to get a bit spicy. So for me, 2nd and 3rd still come down to Leviathan and Furia, and I'm going to rank them like this. Leviathan in 2nd, Furia 3rd. That I feel like is probably pretty fair given what we've seen thus far. And then you've got this middle 5. And I don't really know who to put in 4th. To me, 4th place probably comes down to one of 3 teams. And it's these 3. MIBR, Cloud9, and NRG. MIBR just beat NRG. And so maybe you would say, well, therefore, MIBR should be above NRG. If MIBR and NRG played 10 times, would NRG beat them more times than they lost? I still think so. So I'm still willing to put NRG in 4th for now. For now, I'm still going to put them there. And MIBR Cloud9 as well. I think you could have a good debate about who would be there between those two. But I'm coming off a bit of an MIBR high, so I'm going to put MIBR there. And I'm going to put Cloud9 in 6th. And then 100 Thieves and Sentinels. I mean, Sentinels are obviously making changes now. And so we'll have to see how that goes, I guess. But I think overall, I've actually been a bit more impressed with Sentinels than 100 Thieves. And Sentinels did beat 100 Thieves as well. So I'm going to put Sentinels in 7th and 100 Thieves all the way down in 8th place. And so this is what the Americas has looked like over the weeks. It's not a pretty sight here for most of North American Valorant. Maybe outside of Cloud9, who have, steadily been rising, and maybe even will be 4th by the time I do this next. But NRG, the slow decline has begun. 100 Thieves have started to decline. Sentinels have started their decline as well. EG have declined from where I initially had them. And so, yes, the Made in Brazil, they're up climbing. They're coming here. Furia have climbed. Leviathan now solidifying 2nd place. It's not a pretty sight for North American Valorant if you aren't named Cloud9. And so, those were my power rankings. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Where would you have teams? Who was I unfair on? Who am I too high on? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. We will do one more of these in 2 weeks' time as well, and then we'll probably be going into playoffs in an extra 2 weeks' time, so we'll probably be doing playoff predictions for that last one.